Behind every locked door lies a story the world was never meant to hear. Welcome to Behind Bars TV, where we uncover the hidden realities of the world's toughest prisons, untold inmate experiences, and the systems built to contain them. From supermax facilities to forgotten penitentiaries, we revealed the truth behind concrete walls and razor wire. This is not fiction. This is the world behind bars. How 3 inmates escaped Alcatraz, history's greatest prison escape. Cold Open, the prison that couldn't be escaped. For nearly 3 decades, this place sold a promise to the American public. A promise carved into stone and steel. No one escapes Alcatraz. Surrounded by freezing water. Swept by unpredictable currents. Guarded by isolation itself. They said escape was impossible. Then, one night in June, 3 men disappeared. No alarms, no bodies, no answers, only an empty cell and a mystery that still haunts the United States. Tonight, we reconstruct the most audacious prison escape in history. This is the story of how 3 inmates outsmarted America's most feared prison and vanished into the fog. The Rock, America's prison of last resort. Officially opened as a federal penitentiary in 1934, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary wasn't built to rehabilitate. It was built to end problems. The inmates sent here weren't just criminals. They were failures of other prisons. Men who escaped. Men who attacked guards. Men who refused to be controlled. Alcatraz wasn't a sentence. It was a statement. Why Alcatraz worked. On paper, Alcatraz wasn't the harshest prison. Food was decent. Cells were clean. Discipline was strict, but regulated. What made Alcatraz terrifying was where it sat. Surrounded by water colder than most men could survive for minutes. Currents that could drag a swimmer straight into the Pacific. Distance that broke morale. The Rock didn't need brutality. It had geography. The men who wouldn't stay put. The escape didn't begin with a plan. It began with people. 3 inmates who shared one trait. They refused to accept confinement as permanent. Frank Morris, the mind behind the escape. Frank Morris was not a violent man. He was worse. He was intelligent. With an IQ reportedly well above average, Morris had spent most of his life institutionalized. Orphaned young. In and out of prisons since his teens. Escapes followed him like a signature. If there was a weakness in a system, Morris found it. The Anglin brothers, John and Clarence. Then there were the brothers, John Anglin and Clarence Anglin. Bank robbers from Georgia. Experienced swimmers. Raised around water. They weren't impulsive. They were patient. And they trusted each other completely. Something rare inside Alcatraz. A flaw hiding in plain sight. Alcatraz was built to intimidate. But it was also built quickly. And quickly built things age badly. Behind each cell sink was a small ventilation grate. Designed to circulate air. Over time, salty air ate away at the concrete. The walls softened. And one inmate noticed. The spoon that started it all. Using nothing more than a spoon stolen from a cafeteria. Frank Morris began scraping. Night after night. Slow. Quiet. Concrete dust went down the drain or into pockets. The hole grew. Not fast enough to raise suspicion. But fast enough to matter. Time. The escape's most dangerous enemy. Escaping Alcatraz wasn't about strength. It was about time. The men had limited darkness. Constant head counts. Guards trained to notice routine changes. One mistake would end everything. So the plan evolved slowly, painfully, over months. Why no one noticed? Alcatraz ran on routine, and routine is dangerous. When guards expect stillness, they stop seeing it. The secret workshop above the cells. Behind the cell walls was a maintenance corridor. Above them, an unused utility space. The men slipped through their vent holes and climbed up. This became their workshop. Here, the escape took shape, turning trash into tools. They collected raincoats, soap, cardboard, thread, from trash, from favors, from patience. Nothing here looked dangerous. That's why it worked. The dummy heads. Night checks were the biggest risk. Guards shined flashlights into cells, looking for movement. So the men built something unforgettable. Fake heads, crafted from soap, toothpaste, and toilet paper. Painted carefully. Topped with hair stolen from the barber shop. In the dark, they looked real enough. Building the raft that was never supposed to float. If Alcatraz had a secret weakness, it wasn't the walls. It was imagination. Frank Morris knew one truth above all others. No man could swim far enough in those waters. So the plan didn't rely on swimming. It relied on engineering, turning raincoats into a lifeline. Raincoats were standard issue on Alcatraz. Cheap, rubberized, plentiful. Over months, the men collected more than 50. They cut them into panels, melted seams together with steam pipes, stitched layers for strength. What they were building looked ridiculous. A crude raft. But it had one advantage. It trapped air. The bellows that made it possible. To inflate the raft, they fashioned a bellows from a concertina. A small accordion Morris had access to. Air in, seal, test. Again and again. Every test happened in silence. One loud mistake, and the escape would end before it began. Practicing an escape without moving. They couldn't practice the escape itself. So they practiced the night. Timing footsteps. Learning guard routes. Counting seconds between flashlight sweeps. They learned when guards lingered. When they hurried. Alcatraz wasn't guarded by machines. It was guarded by people. People who followed patterns. Why routine is the enemy of security. Security systems fail not because they're weak, but because they're predictable. And Morris understood predictability better than most men ever would. The night of June 11th, 1962. June 11th, 1962. The air was cold. The fog was heavy. Perfect. At 11:30 p.m., lights out passed without incident. Guards made their rounds. Flashlights swept across bars. 3 men lay motionless in their beds. Or so it seemed. The moment the cells went empty. After the final check, Frank Morris stood up. Quietly, he lifted the dummy head from his pillow, placed it carefully back. Then he climbed through the hole, behind the sink. One by one, the others followed. No alarms, no shouts, just the soft scrape of movement into darkness. The 4th man who didn't make it. There was supposed to be a 4th, Alan West. But his vent hole wasn't ready. The concrete hadn't given way enough. As the others waited above, West struggled. Minutes passed. Then more. Finally, they made the hardest decision of the escape. They left without him. A choice that saved the plan. Waiting would have meant discovery. Discovery meant failure. And so 3 became 2. Then 3 again. As Morris and the Anglin brothers pressed on. Across the roof into the night. They climbed a kitchen vent pipe to the roof. From there, the island opened beneath them. The city lights of San Francisco shimmered in the distance. Freedom was visible, but still impossibly far. They moved along the roofline, out of view of guard towers, down a pipe to the shoreline, launching into the bay. At around 11:35 p.m., the raft touched water. They inflated it with the bellows. Cold air rushed in. The raft held. That was the final test. They stepped aboard. 3 men, 1 raft, an ocean of uncertainty. And then, they pushed off. The currents that killed confidence. The bay around Alcatraz is not calm water. Currents can reach 7 knots. Cold shock can incapacitate in minutes. This is why officials said escape was impossible. But Morris had studied the tides. He knew one thing. If they launched at the right time, the current would carry them toward land, not away. A window measured in minutes. Miss the tide window, and you're dragged to sea. Hit it perfectly. And the bay becomes a conveyor belt to freedom. That night, the timing was nearly exact. Discovery at daybreak. At 7 a.m., a guard knocked on Frank Morris's cell. No response. He knocked again. Then again. Finally, He pushed the head with a baton. It rolled and shattered. The alarm exploded across the island. The manhunt begins. The FBI arrived within hours. The Coast Guard launched boats. Search planes scanned the water. Debris was found. Pieces of raincoat material. A paddle fragment. But no bodies. And no men. Did they drown? Authorities declared the men drowned. The currents were too strong. The water too cold. The raft too crude. Case closed. Except the evidence didn't agree. The problems with the official story. No bodies ever surfaced, which is unusual. Currents usually return remains to shore. And years later, new clues began to appear. The letters, the sightings, the doubt. The Anglin family claimed the brothers sent Christmas cards from South America. A Brazilian farm photo surfaced. 2 men resembling the Anglins. In 2013, the FBI released a letter, supposedly from Frank Morris himself. It claimed they survived and asked for a deal. The FBI reopens the case. In 2018, the FBI quietly reopened the investigation. Tide modeling, DNA testing, new analysis. The conclusion? There is no proof they died, and no proof they lived. Why this escape still matters. Alcatraz closed a year after the escape, not because of Morris, but because the myth was broken. If Alcatraz could be escaped, no prison was invincible. The legend that refuses to sink. Some believe the men drowned that night. Others believe they walked free. But the truth is this. For one night, 3 inmates proved that impossible is often just unexamined, and somewhere beyond the fog. The answer still waits. Allen West, the man left behind. Every great escape has a shadow. For Alcatraz, that shadow was Allen West, the 4th man who didn't make it out. West knew the plan, helped gather materials, practiced the timing. But when the moment came, his hole wasn't big enough. He scraped frantically. The concrete fought back. Minutes slipped away. Above him, Morris and the Anglin brothers waited, listening for guards, counting seconds, feeling the night thin out. Then they made the call no one wants to make. They left. The confession that built the case. When morning came, West told everything. The spoons. The attic workshop. The raincoat raft. The dummy heads. His account was precise, down to times, routes, and materials. Investigators believed him, not because he wanted credit, but because his story fit the evidence perfectly. West didn't escape Alcatraz, but without him, the story wouldn't exist. The tides, science versus certainty. For decades, the argument turned on one question. Could they survive the water? Early authorities said no. But early authorities didn't have modern modeling. Oceanographers later simulated the exact tide window, the same one Morris studied. The results were uncomfortable. Launched when they did, the current doesn't pull you out to sea. It carries you toward Angel Island. A window measured in minutes. Miss the window by 15 minutes, and you're lost. Hit it, and the bay does half the work. That night, the timing was right. Angel Island, the land no one watched. Searches focused on open water. Few looked closely at Angel Island. It was dark, forested, uninhabited at night. If the men landed here, they could hide, rest, and plan the next move. Years later, a family reported a strange campsite. Wet clothes, footprints, makeshift fire. At the time, it meant nothing. In hindsight, it meant everything. The Brazil photo. In the 1970s, the Anglin family received a photograph. 2 men in Brazil, standing near a farm. The resemblance was striking. Facial proportions, posture, aging patterns. Forensic analysis decades later couldn't confirm identity, but it couldn't rule it out either. The photo became a Rorschach test. Skeptics saw coincidence. Believers saw survival. The letter from Frank Morris. In 2013, the San Francisco Police Department received a letter. It claimed to be from Frank Morris. The writer said they survived the bay, that Clarence died in 2008, John in 2011, that he was alive, and sick, and willing to surrender for medical care. The FBI analyzed it. Handwriting, language, age markers. Their conclusion? Inconclusive. Why inconclusive matters. In investigations, inconclusive isn't failure. It's doubt. And doubt keeps cases alive. What the FBI actually believe. Publicly, the FBI closed the case in 1979. Privately, agents remained split. Some believed the men drowned. Others believed they survived the crossing and vanished inland. The Bureau's final report left the door open. No conclusive evidence of death. In law enforcement, that sentence is loud. Why Alcatraz closed? Alcatraz closed in 1963. Officially, it was cost. Unofficially, it was myth. If Alcatraz could be beaten, its purpose vanished. The rock became a museum. The escape became legend. The psychology of the escape. Why does this story endure? Because it isn't just about escape. It's about defiance. 3 men studied a system built to break them, and found it seams. They didn't overpower it. They outthought it. If they survived, where did they go? If they lived, they needed anonymity. New names, new countries, new lives. Brazil offered distance, language barriers, rural isolation. For men skilled at disappearing, it made sense. The mystery that refuses to die. 3 men vanished into the fog. No bodies were found. No certainty returned. Only questions. Did they drown in freezing water? Or did they step onto shore, soaked, exhausted, alive, and walk away from history's most infamous prison? Until proof surfaces, the truth remains suspended between tides. And Alcatraz keeps it secret. What you just saw is more than a story. It's a reality lived by thousands behind bars. If you believe in uncovering the truth, the kind hidden behind concrete walls and silence, then join us. Subscribe to Behind Bars TV and never miss a chapter in the world's most dangerous stories. Until next time, stay aware, stay informed, subscribe, and stay locked in. Until next time, keep your mind open and your curiosity sharp. Remember, freedom and confinement are sometimes only a wall apart.